I know after that, obviously, your biggest night was probably Picarello when you won the European title. But just before that, obviously, you were just being built towards the European title. And people always wonder, like, oh, Jamie, it's a shame he never got a world title shot. But it kind of, the best chance probably would have been you were fighting So Herrera. And it was on the undercard. So Paulie Malignaggi was defending his IBF against Ndu again in Manchester Stadium. And Ricky was co-main, and obviously two of them were being built to fight each other then with Golden Boy. But the closest you came wasn't it that night because Frank Maloney, now Kelly Maloney, was having a conversation with Golden Boy that night, weren't they?
Yeah, well, Golden Boy apparently had said to Maloney that they put me in with Herrera as a bit of a yardstick. They wanted to see how I went on with him. He had previous form with them. They knew he could fight a bit, and they'd said to Frank, see how he gets on with him, and if he comes through it and he passes the test, then we'll look at putting him on against in a world title eliminator in America. So, but I never knew about it. I only found this out off Ricky when I'd retired. So, which is wrong because I was denied the opportunity really of making that decision. I'm not saying I would have made the decision to go to America and box on the undercard to Hatton and Malignaggi, but to be given the option would have been nice when it was there. I'd already passed up on the opportunity to go to America in the past, and that was before I'd sort of built that reputation of being involved in good fights. So it would have gone down better in America, coming off the back of I'd been involved in Fight of the Year twice, after that, and another couple of exciting fights as well. So I'd stopped Herrera in a good fight. I stopped him in the 6th round. Golden Boy was impressed. So it would have been nice to have been given the option. But I'd always wanted to fight for the European title, so I can't say that I would have said yeah. But, like I say, no regrets. It's just it would have been nice to have been asked.
So they were offering you a 50-50 fight on the undercard, wasn't it? And then if you won that, then they give you a world title shot.
Yeah.
So obviously Picarello for the European, that's probably the best night of your career, yeah. And actually 2 years before that, he'd actually fought
Vernon Forrest and Ricardo Mayorga,
yeah. And he had fought Michael Jones, and that was Michael Jones' last ever fight. So that was the best night of your career, I presume.
Well, in terms of achievements and sort of names on your card, then he's got to go down as the best win. The best night the two best nights I'll ever have had in terms of victories in boxing is the first and the third Michael Jones fights. Because it came at such short notice, the first one, it was like a whirlwind that week. And then all of a sudden, I'd gone from boxing the 6th rounder to being British and Commonwealth champion. So my life changed overnight. So I'll never forget that. And obviously the circumstances going into the third one. So they're my best nights. The feeling inside what I had after those two nights can never be beaten. The Macklin fight wasn't any sort of feeling because I was that drained at the end of it, plus the fear of what had happened with Matt and the worry. I went straight to the hospital after that fight to make sure he was okay so there was no enjoyment out of that. And because we was friends as well before the fight, so it was such a horrific fight, and then the worry afterwards, there was no enjoyment to it. And the victory over Picarello was probably my most polished performance. And I actually made that night easy. I think I'd matured physically that night. I'd outgrown the weight, definitely, but it didn't really matter because it was so early on in the fight. And I was so experienced then as well. So all the experiences, I put the best attributes of my style into play that night against probably the perfect opponent for me, because he was very similar to Michael Jones. He couldn't punch hard enough to hold me off. So I always felt like I was going to look really good in that fight, and I did. And so it's definitely the biggest win on my card. And you could easily say, Picarillo was a world champion 2 years before that and fought for a world title 12 months before that. So it could have easily been for a world title, and that could have been the night I became a world champion.
Mm-hmm.
So like I say, no regrets. But Kerry Kays had started doing strength work with me then, which probably had two effects. It made me much stronger, and I out-muscled him better than I probably would have done 12 months before. But it made making the weight so much more difficult because I'd increased sort of muscle size and stuff. So he'd gone a long way to making that fight easier for me, but made it so much harder getting on the scales.
Mm. Yeah, I met and obviously after your fight, so making weight obviously for Ryan Rhodes after that was difficult for you. You were like 19 pounds going into the weigh-in, and you were saying you were dizzy in the ring, walking stuff like that. And that's kind of when you knew you'd kind of fell out of love with boxing, really. I was going to say to you as well, I forgot to say, the Matthew Macklin fight after, I remember you were saying that you were at United game the next day, and then you didn't feel the pain until you were in the pub.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, well, I'd gone to the United game. Steve Wood and Lee Whitehead were an ex-pro, good mate of mine, and we'd gone into the pub afterwards. So all day I felt okay, really, and then he walked in behind me, grabbed me around the waist, and the fucking pain in my ribs was horrendous. So, funnily enough, after about another 5 or 6 pints of Guinness, it went away. So there's a lot to be said about the painkilling methods of alcohol.
Yeah, so sorry. So the Ryan Rhodes fight, obviously you'd lost the European title to him, and he went on to fight Canelo, and the weight cut had been so draining on you. I know you were kind of thinking about packing it in then, but you had a fight with Kontaski a few months later. But you had a brain scan, didn't you? And you got a call the week of that fight. Am I right?
Yeah, well, my brain scan had changed the year before as well. And a lot of people get these letters just saying that we have to inform you that your scan's changed from the previous year, but there's nothing wrong. We just, by law, we have to inform you and stuff. So it's off the British Board of Control. So I wouldn't say I was worried because I knew people who'd had these letters before, but my style of fighting, and up until that point I'd been in Fight of the Year twice, and you start to think to yourself, fucking hell, is this having an effect? Because obviously they can't prove that it's caused from boxing, but you're getting punched in the head. Your brain scan's not the same as it was last year.
Yeah.
So I'd had a conversation with my wife, and I said, well, listen, I'm not too worried, but we'll see how it goes. And then the year after, so I'd had my scans and my medical done before the Ryan Rhodes fight, and I'd said to Steve Wood, because Steve Wood used to get the letters to his address for his office address. Any correspondence from me used to always go to him. And the year before, when the letter had came, we'd both had a discussion, and I said, listen, we'll see what happens by next year. So and I said to him then, by the way, if I ever get a letter like that and I'm boxing, don't tell me, because it'll play on my mind, and I won't pull out the fight because I'll have done all the training, but it'll affect my performance. So I had to have all my medicals done before the Ryan Rhodes fight, and then the week after the fight, Steve rang me and said, listen, come down to the office, you've had another one of them letters. So I was like, fucking hell. Plus I'd just been involved in that fight with Ryan Rhodes.
Yeah.
So I rang the boxing board, had a conversation with Robert Smith. He said, and he said to me, listen, if you're concerned, get a second opinion, because these doctors, they work with us, they understand boxing, but if you for peace of mind, get a second opinion if you want. So I got a doctor from Salford to a brain specialist to have a look at my things. But when I had the meeting with him, I had the fight scheduled, but it was 3 months away, say. So I said to him, I want to really know before my next fight, because if you think that it's caused from boxing, then, I'll have to seriously consider retiring. And I never heard anything back off him. So cracked on with training as normal. And then on the Monday before the fight, which was scheduled for the Saturday, I got a phone call first thing in the morning off a secretary, basically saying, why didn't you come to your appointment last week? And I said, I've never had a letter or anything like that. So she said, well, it's just that the doctor's aware that you're boxing next week, and during your conversation last time, you'd said to him that you'd like to know his opinion before you box again. So she said, can you come down this morning? So I said, yeah, sound, I'll come down. And my son was off school because he had an ear infection, so he's poorly. Wife was in work, so I goes off there with my son. He's only 5 or 6. And he basically sat down, went through all my scans, and he explained about the part of your brain, what changes and stuff. And he said, they're right in what they're saying is, this change can happen naturally. It can just happen. He said, but it can also be caused by trauma. He said, and, the fact of the matter is, you're a boxer, you've been involved in all these tough fights, and in my professional opinion, it's more likely to be caused from boxing than it is a natural occurrence. He said, now this is the part of your brain which affects memory, speech, coordination, all those things that are associated with fighters having problems later on in their life. He said, so
the middle, isn't it?
Never know.
The membrane.
Yeah. So he said, we never know how it will affect, because every individual is different. He said, so you might be one of the lucky ones where you never have any problems like that. He said, or in 10, 15, 20 years' time, you might start to develop problems which are associated to this. He said, so the facts of this are pretty brutal. You either walk away from boxing or risk potentially making it worse and giving yourselves problems later on in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, now what's your advice? And he went, as a professional, my advice to you is to get away from boxing as soon as you can.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And you had to fight that Saturday.
I looked at my son, and he had no idea of the conversation, what was going on. He just sort of looked at me, shrugged his shoulders, and that was it. I came out, I rang my wife, and I said, listen, told her the conversation, and I said, I'm going to box on Saturday, and that's it. I'm never fighting again. So she went, right, okay, fine. Told Oliver the conversation. He agreed. And then basically, Oliver said afterwards, he pulled me out of the fight because he could tell I didn't want to be in there.
Yeah.
And he was right. It was the only time I was ever in a boxing ring conscious of getting punched in the head, thinking, what am I doing here? So, and there was only 2 rounds left, but the amount of damage which is potentially can be caused in 2 rounds could be life-changing. So I'll be forever grateful for him for saving me that night and pulling me out, because you just never know what could have happened.
Mm. I think you were sparring in Marbella, and you were kind of thinking of coming back because you were doing all right. But it was in that conversation with Adam Smith, wasn't it, that you had, and he kind of talked you out of it, wasn't it? And Johnny Nelson gave you some advice as well.
It was Adam Smith, Johnny Nelson, and Bob Mee. Those 3 guys. Bob Mee's a great guy, and basically the advice what they gave me, it all made sense. And it was like, do you think that you can win a world title? Well, most fighters think they can. When most fighters think they can when they're making a comeback. Only the very special ones do. You don't want to ruin your reputation, what you've built up over the last 10 years, because you're respected in boxing, and that's hard to get. Do you think you'll get any more respect off boxing fans and people in boxing if you win a world title? And the answer was no. And really, when I thought about it, I wasn't getting any younger, and the only real motivation for it was financial. And was it worth putting my health at risk for that? And the answer was no. So I'd gone there with the full intention of making a comeback, and walked away. And I'm glad now. I'm glad I never did, because you never know what could have happened. Going back to the other conversation about your brain scan, but I don't want to ruin the legacy what I had in boxing or I've got, because I have got a lot of respect from the career I had, and I'm thankful for that, because I never had any sort of interpretation of how my career would go. I just wanted to entertain people, and didn't really have ambitions of winning titles. I just wanted to be involved in good fights, and that's what happened. So, I have no regrets, and I'm content with what happened. It's just, you can't have regrets, because what's the point? You can't do anything about it. You can't go back and change things. So, but one decision I'll always be happy that I made was that I never made a comeback, because, potentially that could have been fucking so risky. Yeah.
And Johnny Nelson gave you the advice. He gives every single fighter when they retire. He always says, he says, that feeling of wanting to fight again. He says, it'll never leave you. He says, but it'll take you 2 years to actually deal with it better. 2 years.
Yeah. Well, and 10 years later, he's still there, and he is exactly right. The fact of the matter is, we're fighters for a reason. We have something in us which is, for whatever reason, whether it's going back to fucking Neanderthal days, caveman days, it's like a instinct to compete and fight. We was probably the stupid bastards who used to go out in the caveman days and go hunting for food while all the dinosaurs were fucking roaming about. Yeah. Just sort of no regard for your personal safety. But so it never goes away. It does sort of get less and less, but that competitiveness and that instinct never leaves you. You just learn to live with it. You learn to deal with it. And I've had this conversation recently with Tommy Coyle. Obviously, he's recently retired, and I knew he would be one of the ones who struggled the most because of the love he's got for boxing and competing and fighting. So, and how much it sort of it took over his life. He loved being a fighter. So I'd got to the point where I didn't enjoy being a fighter anymore, and yet I still struggled. So I knew how much Tommy would struggle with it. I'm just glad that I've experienced it, and we're so close, so that I can sort of hold his hand with it and help him along through it, because it is a difficult transition, and he's fortunate that he's set himself up for a life after boxing. The other stuff he's got going on, because he can keep his mind occupied, which is always a good thing.
He must be the most prepared retired boxer for life without boxing that wasn't a world champion, with all the businesses he has.
Definitely, without a doubt.
I don't know if you mind me asking, but a few years later you were training in Marbella, training people and whatnot, but you actually got shot. If you want to talk about that, it's a crazy story, absolutely crazy story.
Yeah, it's fucking wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah. So you went out for a couple of drinks with a friend, and obviously he's got two separate taxis home, and you were walking to your apartment that night, and then you got shot. Do you want to talk about that, the story?
Well, it was the only weekend I ever spent in Marbella, and I'd been going there training Macklin for 9 months. The only reason I was there was because Matt had a press conference in Dublin on the Wednesday, and he said to me, "Listen, don't fly out on Monday because I'm going to be in Dublin, so there's no point. But why don't you fly out Thursday instead, but stay until following Friday, because it's Danny Vaughan's birthday, a weekend, and everyone's going out for a drink. So I did. And then fucking I came, me and Danny backdoored it because we'd had enough to drink. Danny went one way, I went another, got out of a taxi, and then there's someone stood in the garden and come out fucking shot me. Right. And I thought it was someone, I just thought it was one of the lads messing about at first, having the crack. And turned out he was fucking serious.
Was he, the person came out from behind a black car wearing a mask and pointed a gun, you thought it was one of the lads, and you kind of said, you said fuck off, like, and then you walked away, and then you kind of thought, you know what, that's not even funny, that, and then
it's not even funny, yeah, exactly. And then as it turns out, it wasn't funny.
Yeah.
So listen, it's one of the scariest things what you can ever go through. Not necessarily what actually happened, because you don't have. I didn't have chance to be scared because, well, first of all, I thought it was a joke, and then second of all, before I could even think it was serious, it was serious, and I was in a situation. What I mean about scary is being lay on the floor, bleeding to death, thinking I'm never going to see my fucking wife and kids again. Mm-hmm. And I had to ring my own ambulance. So, you know, being lay there thinking they're never going to find me, how they're going to trace my phone call. I can't believe I'm never going to fucking see my kids again. It's the most horrible feeling you can ever have in your life. And it's weird though, because although I would never wish that upon anyone, in a weird sort of way, that experience has made me look at my life in a different perspective now. Mm-hmm. So I enjoy things what I probably would never have appreciated before that happened. Little things make much more sense to me now than anything you could ever imagine. So I don't want to say it's good what happened, because that's obviously not the right thing to say, but the way it's changed my mindset and my outlook on life, the only thing I can say is I can only say it's had a positive impact, because I appreciate everything so much more now because of that experience. Mm-hmm. So it's ridiculous to say it was a good thing to happen, but how can you say that when my life experiences now because of it are so much better? You know, I appreciate every moment I have with my kids, every single holiday. I've got to be honest with you, I got to the point where I was fucking spoiled. I've been in that many training camps and holidays and stuff across the world, and Tenerife. Been to Tenerife about 40 times up until that point. And now every time I land in Tenerife, I get this warm, grateful feeling in my belly. Mm. And it's because I might never have got there again. And I look at my kids when we're landing, and I always look at them and think, fucking hell, the amount of times we spent in Tenerife before that happened to me in Marbella. Can I imagine Colleen and the kids landing on their own? They'd obviously always be thinking about me if the worst case scenario happened that night. Mm. So like I say, it's fucking horrendous what happened, and you would never wish it on anyone, but as a consequence of what happened for me, it's impacted my life in a positive way, because I look at everything in a positive light because I'm getting to experience some things. Mm.
The scariest part of it was, you said when you were on the ground, you could hear his footsteps coming over to you, and do you think he was looking at your identity and he must have thought, oh shit, it's the wrong person? Because if he didn't know that, he probably would have put the final nail in the coffin, wouldn't it? That was the scariest part.
Yeah. Maybe, and that's the thing. He was dark, so probably come over and maybe looked at me and realised, but I just don't know. But again, how lucky, you know, I'm just so lucky to can be having this conversation with you.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to talk about because, like I keep saying, it's fucking horrendous. You wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But the knock-on effects of that for me and the consequences it's had in my mind. The only thing I will say is I struggle with, like, if I'm out at night and there's no reason to be scared. If I'm on my own and it's quiet and it's dark, but I just get an eerie feeling. You know, it's and I suppose that'll always be there. It's like a psychological thing because of the sort of atmosphere and the surroundings at night. But I'd say that's the only sort of negative thing what I could say, apart from the fact that my leg's fucked and I've got nerve damage in it.
Yeah.
I say fucked. It's all right. I get around and I walk around all right. But I've got like a foot support what I got made so I can run because they told me I'd never run again. So so I suppose taking that and the worst case scenario, or your leg's not working great, then I fucking take that all day long.
Yeah. And there's actually the bullet's still in your hip. They couldn't take it out, isn't that right? So you were saying that when you walk through airports, you know, it always buzzes and you can't have an MRI. So that can't be easier because anytime you go through an airport, it's going to remind you. Do you know what I mean? When you walk.
Well, the first couple of times it did, and then it stopped doing it. Now, whether it's got scar tissue around it, it's more difficult to read. I don't know, but I went to a chiropractor actually in Belfast, and Nick, he's a great guy, and he x-rayed my lower back and my hips to see if there was any sort of damage going on. And he sort of looked and went, "What's that?" And I went, listen, mate, it's a long story. I said, but it's a bullet. I got shot, like, and I expected him to be a bit shocked. And he sort of went, Jamie, listen, you're in Belfast. He said, I see fucking bullets in people all the time. Don't worry about it. So the first couple of times I went through the airport, he bleeped, and then he's not done it since. So God, I don't have to explain myself now.
So obviously you're a trainer now, and I know originally you didn't really want to be a trainer. You said it was you kind of, your quote was, you said it's like babysitting. I don't want to do that, you know. But obviously you came into it. You've got Carl Frampton under you, you got Stephen Ward, Chantal Cameron, and you've also got Dave Allen now as well. What made you come around into training?
Well, it just happened. I ended up helping Tommy Coyle out for Steve Wood, and as a favour, really. And then when Tommy lost to Derry, he was upset after the fight, and he was sort of saying, because it was a short-term plan, that it was never meant to be long-term, and he was upset in the changing rooms and stuff afterwards, and he was sort of saying, "You'll still train me now, won't you?" So I was like, "Yeah, of course I will. Don't worry." You know what I mean? Because I didn't want him to worry, you know, even at that early stage, you can't help but like Tommy. You know, he's a likeable character. So it was just basically to help him out. And then what has happened since then is I'd had a couple of fighters on and off who had sort of told that I'd help out, and it didn't really work out. So it was just me and Nige training Tommy, basically. And then when Oliver got sick initially, nobody knew about it, but he'd asked me if I would train Martin and Rocky and Mark Leach while he recovers. And unfortunately, he never got to the stage where he was well enough to train him again. Yeah. So, and then during that time was when Carl rang me. So Carl rang me and just out of the blue one day and said, "Are you still training fighters?" And I said, "Well, listen, as it happens, I'm actually training a few now, but I was still training Tommy." Sort of briefly explained the situation to Oliver, but asked him not to say anything to anyone. I said, so yeah, the answer is yeah, I am, but not really in the way you thought it was. He's been sort of, he's come from a bad way. So then Carl came, then Stephen came, then Jack Carroll came, then Chantel's come, and then the gym's just grown and grown. Mm-hmm. So it come from, there was no intention at all, from my point of view, of becoming a trainer. It just sort of evolved from, really, the only way I can describe it is from a horrible situation. I honestly was of the mindset that once Tommy retired and I fulfilled sort of my obligation to him, I would have walked away from training. Whereas everything happens for a reason, and Carl rang me that day and gave me an opportunity to train one of the best fighters in the world, which is crazy when you think about it, because it was a big gamble for Carl when you look at it from that point of view. Mm-hmm. So I think he had a conversation with his dad, and his dad had mentioned my name, and just something along the lines of, I've seen him in the corner with Tommy and I've heard the way he talks and I feel like he'd do well for you. But no real reason behind it. Yeah. Again, probably just a gut feeling. So.
Yeah. And Dave, I know Dave hasn't, like, Dave's kind of trained a little bit with you, but obviously during this lockdown he hasn't been. But what was it that, how did that come about? How did you come about kind of partnering up with?
Dave, he's been bandied about for ages on social media. People have been copying me into posts with Dave saying, you should go and train with Jamie. You feel like you'd fit well in his gym and stuff like that. So I sort of had an idea about maybe he was going to ask me at one point. But because we've been that busy in the gym, it's tough to take fighters on, because you can't, it's not fair on the fighters I've already have, because you spread yourself too thin, and you can't really give the new fighter the time that you'd want to give him. So it's not really fair on anyone. But Tommy retiring recently sort of made space for someone. And I'd always thought about Dave, that if he did ask me, then I always felt like I'd be able to help him out. So yeah, I think he's a good addition to the gym. He's certainly a character. He can fight, and going off conversations what I've had with him, just a few little adjustments, I feel like will make a big difference. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting cracking with him.
Yeah. It goes back to the sensible thing as well, doesn't it? Because you kind of have said before, you felt like he's a little bit lost, and you kind of feel like you would have the tools to help him.
Yeah, I think he's probably one of those. Obviously every personality is different, and there's certain ways that you can get the best out of certain people. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like I think Tommy and Dave are similar in one sense, in the terms that they're deep thinkers and they overanalyze things a lot. And if they just made it a little bit simpler for themselves, and it's easier said than done. Overthinking's fucking horrendous sometimes when you can't get out of that sort of loop in your mind where you're going over and over. Yeah. But I feel like I'm pretty good in areas like that from the psychological side of it. So I feel like I'll be able to help him. We haven't even had a session together yet. He's just been an agreement over a conversation on the phone at first, and then I've had a couple of FaceTime conversations with him. But I've been studying him since he's come on board, looking at the areas where he needs to improve. Spoke to him, but I think the areas where I'll be able to help him will be his mindset. I think if he gets his mindset, if he looks at things from a different point of view, it'll make things clearer for him. And just by approaching things differently, I feel like he'll apply himself better. He'll be enjoying himself more, so it'll feel like less hard work or less of a chore. And I feel like I can improve a few little things on him, which will make a big difference. And added to that, I feel like him being around all the fighters in the gym, You know, there's some unbelievably talented fighters, so I feel like he'll learn a lot from them guys as well. So yeah, I think it's a good move on his part, and I feel like I'll be able to help him out a lot.
Yeah. Is it difficult for you or stranger for you, considering the career you had with Oliver, because you've quite a lot of, well, not a lot, like, but you've a good few boxers under you, and you're spreading out your time with them, and you know, like for instance, like the best person I've met in Ireland, like Peter Taylor, for spreading out his time, because I think he's about 14 boxers under him, and he has a logbook for each person. And even though you think he wouldn't be able to give the time to each one, they all say he does. You know, he spreads it out quite well. But it was completely a polar opposite for you with Oliver Harrison, God rest his soul, because it was just you and him for years. So how do you find that as a coach now, spreading out your time compared to what you had?
I feel like what I didn't get in terms of picking up off other fighters, it benefited me because I had that one-to-one attention. But I feel like my fighters probably get a little bit of the best of both worlds in the terms of I always try and allocate time to each individual one. But not, and obviously that's impossible all of the time, but I try and do it. I make it important as a sort of, depending on who's got fights coming up or what needs to be addressed in certain different times, I'll make that a priority. And the lads understand that, so they get the time, what they need, and what they should get when it's needed, and you know, when they're coming up to fights and stuff like that. And so it generally runs like in a rotation. So someone's probably halfway through a camp when someone's just boxed and someone's just starting. So it doesn't really. We've never encountered a problem where it's not worked. So you know, hopefully that'll continue. But sometimes there's only so much you can say, or the information you can only give it them so many times. And I really have picked this up myself over the. You know, I've been coaching for 8 years now. A lot of the time, you can only say it so many times, and then I've started to say now, listen, you have to now start taking that on board and putting it into practice yourself. There's only so many times I can tell you to do it. But, you know, it's that thing I was talking about with Oliver when saying about that default defence and that finding comfort in being uncomfortable. At some point, you have to go and do it yourself. It has to be like second nature. So there's no good in me telling you to do it all the time. You have to get to the point where you do it off your own back, second nature. And so giving people information or instruction and then giving them to go away with and work on it themselves is the better way of doing it, because they grow as a fighter and as a person in their own mind rather than relying on you. I suppose it's like parenting. You give your kids information and try and teach them stuff, but at some point then you have to let them go off themselves and do it off their own back. And it's similar to a fighter. You can teach them and nurture them, but at some point they have to go away and do it. They actually physically have to go and do it without you. You know, when someone throws a jab, you can't shout slip and then slip the jab. You know, at some point they have to fucking do it themselves.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I suppose, and that kind of comes back to when Anthony Joshua was fighting Ruiz. A lot of people don't realise actually.
So you know, just about 3 minutes ago, my battery flashed up 10%.
Right. Okay.
At some point it might come.
Yeah. I'm nearly done. Sorry. What I was going to say to you was Carl Frampton this year. So basically, during the lockdown, it was announced he was going to fight in Windsor against not Windsor. Sorry, against Jamel Herring. But obviously, since then, now it looks like it's going to be in America. And do you think they will fight and it will be this year? Do you think it will happen?
Well, it was supposed to be Windsor.
Windsor, sorry, yeah.
They was talking about they was talking June or July in Windsor. But depending on what happens now with the lockdown and the timing and stuff, it'd be real difficult to do a fight at Windsor because of the weather. So if that fight happens this year, and even that's not a gimme because no one knows how long this is going to go on for. And then even when lockdowns lifted and people start gradually getting back to normal, no one knows when arena sports and stuff are going to get back up and running. So there's just too many questions to answer, really. But looking at those things aren't for me to decide. At the end of the day, my job is just to train Carl Frampton. So their decisions what are going to come from MTK, Top Rank, and Frank Warren. But looking at it from the outside, looking in, you'd think it'd make more sense if it can't take part at Windsor Park. Then it deserves to be on a big stage, and the SSA Arena really probably doesn't hold that enough people. So it probably make more sense to do it in America. There's been a few rumours about Madison Square Garden, which would be obviously unbelievable. But New York's in such a state at the minute, you wouldn't like to think that that'd be sort of sooner rather than later. Whereas Las Vegas is nowhere near as badly hit as New York. So thinking about it from a sensible point of view, if it was going to be happen in Belfast, it's probably going to be Windsor Park, September, if it was that quick. But I can't see it. And then if I was guessing, I'd probably say November, December, probably Vegas, but maybe New York. But that's a big if.
I suppose, the thing is, everything can go back to normal in terms of there can be social distancing, and until there's vaccines, there won't be any contact, and people go back to work. But until contact is allowed, contact sports can't come back, which will be probably a very long time. Even talk about scrapping the Premier League this year, which would be brilliant. For both of us, I saw you share that actually on Twitter. I was laughing. But I think that's really it, Jamie. But I really appreciate your time, and I have to say, when you're interviewing people that you haven't interviewed before, you wonder if they're going to hold back. But you've been very open with me, talked about everything, and I really appreciate all the time you've given me. I think we've done about 2 hours. I think we did a longer interview than you did with Tris Dixon. But I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. Anytime.
But it's been brilliant, So thanks very much, and keep safe, and hopefully I'll see you in Ulster Hall or something soon.
Happy days. You too. Take care.
All right. Thanks very much, mate.
All the best, pal. Take care, mate.